Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. I thought it was about time we do a back to basics type video where we just talk about homesteading and different things you can do in the environment you're already in. Maybe you're living in the outskirts of the city or in the suburbs or something like that, and you don't have 100 acres to farm on. Well, I can tell you guys from past experience, we've been here at this homestead since 2008, and my wife and I have been, trying to bring in lots of different kinds of animals and trial and error and lots of reading and lots of research and different things that we've done along the way. Lots of gardening, lots of mistakes that we made along the way, and some good, some bad. And I wanted to kind of go over some of these things and share them with you. It's still early spring, so a lot of our stuff hasn't come up. And in fact, it's been so wet here, unseasonably wet even, that we had to put off a lot of our earlier planting that we would have done. Usually we're worried about what's going to freeze, these last minute freezes and stuff. But you can see back here behind me, that's my rabbitry. We have rabbits going here on the homestead. They are a great thing, a great way to put meat on the table. Probably out of all my livestock, definitely the best, most pound for pound, pound on return on investment of meat that you get to consume is going to be from rabbit. They're just excellent homestead animals. And, they have the added symbiotic or, mutually beneficial advantage of you can use their rabbit pellets immediately in your garden. You don't have to wait for them to cool down through a compost system or something like that. You can put them straight to work, and they're rich in nutrients. And what we've recently started doing is, because I'm here on a homestead, I've got about 2 acres here, just under 2 acres here is what I have all around me, back behind me. You can't see through a lot of it right now, but this isn't really about a tour or how much you need or anything like that. You can do this in a very small area. Here on my 2 acres, we've probably got less than 1/4 of an acre here in the backyard, and that's where all of our homestead activity takes place. So I wanted to take you guys around here and show you, kind of show you around what you can do to maybe make yourself feel and be more self-reliant into the coming years. And especially one of the reasons my wife and I are doing this is we're both getting closer and closer every year to what we might call retirement age and stuff like that. Now, my plan doesn't involve retiring. My plan involves working until the day I die. On my own things, though, for myself, right? I don't want to work for the man till the day I die. If I have to get there, whatever, for a little while, but that's not really the goal. The goal is absolute freedom and liberty. Being able to be the master of your own domain that hopefully you own and is paid for, and you don't go into a bunch of debt and stuff like that for. So I'm going to get the camera spun around here, and I'm going to show you some shots of my cages. We're going to talk about the rabbit cages. We're going to talk about 2 other types of backyard livestock that I think, if you're really serious, if you're a prepper and you've just got, you've stacked everything to the ceiling, you've gotten to the point where you just can't stack any higher, but you still don't feel quite right about it. Well, you and I are in the same boat. And that's why my wife and I years ago made the decision to have and produce our own backyard livestock of all different kinds. So we're going to go over that in this video. I'm going to try not to make it an hour long, although when I get to talking about this stuff, it excites me, and I often go off on little tangents and stuff and think they're really important. And so anyway, that's almost one right there. We're going to get the camera turned around, and I'm going to show you what's up. First of all, I'll just spin around here just real slowly. Here's where our main garden is. Now, we have gotten less serious about our gardening as far as turning produce into stored food, because it takes a vast amount of energy and time. And I live in a hot climate, so I could talk to you about what plants grow well here. Obviously, those are asparagus. Look, they're just going crazy. I mean, certain things, it's been so wet this year. We've got strawberries, we've got all sorts of things. I'm lucky enough to live in a pretty warm climate where we get a really long growing season. But one of the things that we just are in love with is, at one point, I bought a government surplus auction, and it came with a whole bunch. I mean, a 30 by 30 shop building full of old 5-drawer filing cabinets like this one, and lateral filing cabinets like this one. And this one has been here on the ground for at least 4 or 5 years now. And I see no signs that it's going anywhere anytime soon. Now it's starting to get some surface rust and different things like that. If you didn't like that look, you could easily come in there and do some faux brick paint or faux wood. You could put wood on the side of it. I thought about doing that to make it look more natural and woody, because I do prefer the wood look. But there's different things you could do if you don't want it to rust, or you don't want it to be white or gray or whatever. But our thing is more about function over form. So if we were trying to make this look really, really beautiful, there are some things we could do. And my wife has talked about that, coming in there with some stencils. In fact, she just bought a stencil kit that makes it to where you can make it look like wood grain, kind of like what's on the front of that old, that is a washer case. Now I'm actually not using it this year, but in the past I've grown potatoes in that and it worked great. It's an old washer that someone was going to throw away in the scrap bin. We actually got it off the land, the 100 acres that we're working on now. And that's one of the things is why I'm calling this back to basics, is because, you know, for a while now I've been so spread so thin as far as all the different things and the different plates I'm trying to keep up in the air, that I haven't been able to really talk to you guys about just the importance of do what you can with what you have right now. There's a lot that can be done with what some people would say is one man's trash. These things are excellent. Now they're not totally full of dirt. Basically what we did, because we didn't want to use all that dirt, because it costs a lot of money to fill those up with dirt, and then it'd be hard to move and it'd be really heavy. So what we did was we did hugelkultur, they call it, where, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. You basically get a bunch of rotten wood and sticks and limbs and different things like that, and you layer it up, layer it up, layer it up. And then we went in with a heavy dose of rabbit manure and compost blend that we've been making for years. And so all these filing cabinets are massive producers. They're easier to water. They're easier to pull weeds, because look, I'm not bending down at all really. I'm bending my back just a little bit because I'm a tall dude, but my wife doesn't have to bend down at all to pick the weeds. And you can see we didn't bring the dirt all the way to the top. We left it down in there a bit. I don't know, you know, this is more her field of expertise, I'll be honest with you. I don't know what a lot of this is. And yeah, ignore the weeds back there. We've still got to do some spring cleaning, but she's got mint going over there. She's got chives, I believe is what those purple headed flowers are. She just, hopefully you can see that. She just put, I believe those are all different kinds of peppers. We love peppers, or I do really. It's mainly me. Most of them are too hot for her, but we grew some of the best Tabascos, and not only Tabascos, but chili peppers. They just tend to do really well here. We've got a tomato in this little separate container. This is an old feed bucket, or a feed mineral bucket or something like this. You can find these for sale for real cheap. Even if you don't have large livestock, you can get these real cheap, like on Marketplace or Craigslist. Or if you know a farmer, you can just ask them, hey, can I give you a couple of bucks a piece, or $4 or $5 a piece for these? Because they're worth it. They'll last several seasons. You just need to drill some holes for drainage. And again, you could make them a lot prettier than what we have done. But that's our little garden area. It's not too big. We got some basic stuff. Basically, it's sort of like a fancy salsa garden is kind of the way we look at it now. We used to do a whole lot more stuff, but it was just so taxing, and the return on investment just wasn't there. And you know, then later on we got into chickens, and we'll go look at the chickens here in a little bit. I think every homestead, that's probably the gateway animal, and I'm kind of doing it in the wrong order here, but we're already over here by the rabbits. So I want to show you my rabbits. This is a little doe here, a little female. Let me make sure you guys can see in there well enough. It gets tricky with the camera when you go into darker areas, getting a good shot of them. If you follow the channel, or if you're a subscriber, you know I posted a video not long ago. We actually had an event of predation, I guess we'll call it. A predator, or a pair of predators at least, came over here and attacked my rabbits. And poor this guy here, he's one of our bucks, but his right foot, I believe it is, got nibbled on, because basically what happens is, as they stand there, hopefully you can see that, a little piece of their fur and flesh stick through, and their nails, okay? Their little fingernails or claws, or whatever you call them. And we determined that it was basically a pack of dogs. We believe it was a pack of dogs. Middle of the night, I look out the back door. I see two dogs that weren't supposed to be back here. I thought they were coyotes because one of them was kind of like a little bit German Shepherd looking, and at dark, at nighttime, it was moving like a flash, so I couldn't really make heads or tails of it, and I thought it was a coyote. By the time I grabbed my pellet gun, which is the only thing that's safe for me to shoot around here without hitting other rooftops. See, I've got rooftops back here, so I can't just go willy-nilly, firing a gun off. And if you're going to do something like that, you're going to have livestock, you need to figure out a way to keep it as predator proof as possible. Now keep in mind, this is not open. We have a fence. Now it's not the tallest fence. It's like a 4.5 foot chain link fence, but it has the spikes on the top of it. And they crawled over those spikes and got in here to my rabbitry and terrorized many of my rabbits and killed one of them and wounded two others, actually three others. This poor girl here, this is one of my original does from the original trio we bought, and they are New Zealand Tamuk mix. Okay, I believe this one over here is 100% Tamuk, and this one is the New Zealand Tamuk mix, and she's a little bit smaller bodied than this one is. This is a large bodied rabbit, but the weird thing is, this girl here has fewer kits or babies than this one does. So I'll go ahead and open it up. Normally, that right there is a nesting box I made out of an old filing cabinet drawer. So I think what I'm trying to emphasize to you guys is you have to, if you want to do it cheap and you want to do it well, then you have to learn how to utilize, one man's trash is another man's treasure type of a philosophy, so don't let anything go to waste. And don't also, at the same time, don't become a super hoarder, because it's a very difficult balance. I ain't gonna lie to you. There's times that I feel overwhelmed because I save so much stuff, because I'm like, man, I might need that thing. And as soon as you throw it away, you guys know the rule. As soon as you throw it away or get rid of it, you'll go to looking for it and you won't be able to find it. It'll drive you nuts. So it doesn't take a lot to keep backyard livestock like these rabbits. Now, one thing I would recommend, just as my experience, progresses, as you can see here, it's open. Let me turn the light up a little. It's open down below my stand here. These cages, they're just sitting on a stand I made with a roof, like a lean-to roof to keep them dry. And you do need to do that, keep them dry if you're gonna keep them outside. But those dogs, they drug this cage off. That's why it's so foobar looking. It's all wrinkled up and messed up. That's one of the cages I built on the channel here and showed people how to do it. But yeah, it's real basic. If you can come out and give them water once a day and food once a day and make sure that predators aren't eating them up, then you'll be okay. And one thing I could have done, and I'm still considering, is I could go right around this cage about where a dog or a coyote's face would be and run a couple of 2 or 3 strands of wire down there. I thought about fencing it off, but the problem is I need to be able to get in there and get these filing cabinet drawers full of poo so that I can pull them out and either put them directly in my garden or in my compost bin, which sits right here next to the rabbit hutch. So, I mean, there's a lot you can do with a trio of rabbits. And honestly, one thing that is hard, I'm not gonna lie, if you're gonna use these for meat rabbits, because that's what I'm talking about here. If you're gonna eat these rabbits, it is difficult. And the way we did it was we brought in a trio where we had these 2 does and we had a buck over here. But unfortunately, my buck was a victim of the dog attack. And let me just show you what they did since you're here. This is what can happen. Those dogs chewed their way through, probably grabbed a hold of his foot first and pulled and started unthreading, unwelding it. It's welded wire, but they started biting it so hard that it broke the welds. And eventually they were able to get my poor buck, man. He was a great buck. I loved him. And he was definitely really sweet, really cool to get along with. He wasn't going to be one of the ones we were going to put on the dinner plate. It's the offspring that we were after. And there are certain rules, like, for example, if you don't want to have inbreeding and genetic problems, you can breed the offspring to the parent, but you can't breed the offspring to the siblings, right? If that makes sense to you. So like this buck here, right here in the middle, the one that's wounded, this one or this one, I don't remember which, I've got it written down. One of those is his mama. Now the smart move would be for me to breed to the one that's not his mama. But if I needed to, I could breed to his mama, and there shouldn't be any genetic problems with that, at least based on the research that I've done. So far, we've never had to do that because we had Pete, our world-class Tamuk buck over here that was, you know, just doing a wonderful job for us. He was real good to the does and everything. But you know, I suggest if you have a backyard, you get something like this set up. Now wait, before we walk away from here, I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking the same thing. Oh, I bet it smells like a barnyard out there. Well, it really doesn't. Especially if, you know, like let's say once a month you go around and you pick these filing cabinets up and you go dump them out somewhere in your yard that you want to be beautiful, or around a plant, or when you're amending soil, or when you're doing anything like that, you get rid of this waste. The urine is actually what stinks. The rabbit manure, honestly, it just doesn't have a smell to it at all. If anything, it smells a little earthy. So I highly recommend it, and putting it close to your garden will help just make your life easier. So let's move on over to the quail. All right, if you've been with the channel any length of time, you know this is what I called my ultimate Coturnix quail cage. And I still stand by that. This thing has been awesome. It was simple to make. As you can see, it's just 2x4s, braced the right way. And I ended up using quite a bit of smaller dimensional material as well, like let's call them 2x2s. But you know, just basic doors, basic latches. It's really easy. Some barn tin for the roofing, just to keep them dry. And the rest of it, we used rabbit wire. Now, I don't know if those dogs that got in my backyard here, if they just didn't notice the quails, but they left them alone. I don't know why. But the other thing, and I'll show you in a second, that back section is only partially wire floor. The rest of it in the back has a piece of plywood there where if a predator was trying to attack them from the bottom, if they're smart about it, they could run back there in the back. And you can see there's a little tunnel back there. I'm going to open it up for you. And I'm telling you the truth here. I'm airing my dirty laundry. You see how dirty it is in there? I don't normally let it get this poopy and dirty. But we've been really busy, and again, it's been really raining a lot. So I haven't had a chance to really deep clean this quail cage yet after overwintering. But it's a really simple setup, as you can see. You can go get one of these waterers from Tractor Supply or order it on Amazon or something. And I got these bins. Of course, they didn't have holes in them. I had to use a hole saw and a drill to cut. Looks like about, I'd say that's probably 1.5 inch hole. I put a series of like 8.5 inch holes in there, and unfortunately they probably won't do it where we can see them, but that one was actually eating right then, and it's just enough where they can get their head in there through the hole, because if you leave it open, these quail will get in there kind of like chickens, and they'll scratch and they'll waste a whole bunch of feed. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. There's another guy that basically his whole channel is about quail, Coturnix quail. And he was one of the reasons that I ended up getting into this, because he had a lot of really great tips like this. So I'm not trying to claim credit for that. That was his idea, someone else. But yeah, they're pretty cool. They taste great. They make pretty good eggs. In fact, I see one right there. I believe that back in the corner is an egg that didn't form a good shell on it. Oh, she's curious. She wants to be on camera. Hey, girl. Now, don't you fly out on me or something. But yeah, these are Coturnix quail, extra large variety. And you can see from my hand, they're about a handful, you know. So if you're going to have a meal for your family, it's going to take several of those things to make things work. Now, I'll tell you one struggle that we've faced trying to, you know, raise quail and bring them into our backyard here. We bought an incubator. My wife bought one, and we really didn't research it. I'm not blaming her. Someone she knew or something at work was wanting to sell it for cheap, and she was like, oh, hey, an incubator. Well, It was one of these cheap Amazon Chinese ones, and we lost a lot of eggs when we were trying to do our first hatching. It was so frustrating because I was constantly worrying about it, you know, because once you're, you know, 20 days in or something, you can't have the heat going up and down wildly. And that's what was going on. And so we were successful. We were able to hatch quail, but it was a real stressful month, I think it is. It's something like 21 or 24 days that it takes to hatch them. But they're more delicate than chicken eggs, and I think they're more, because they're smaller, they're more susceptible to heat changes, up and down, and humidity changes and things like that. So you want to get a good incubator because these birds, you know, I don't know if it's because they've been in captivity so long or what. These are not wild like quail that you would see out and go hunting for. These are domesticated quail made for this purpose right here. They probably wouldn't survive. And maybe they would, but they might not survive out in nature without shelter like this and with someone taking care of them. So they're bred for this purpose, but because of that, they don't really sit on their eggs. So I've never had one go broody and try to hatch their own eggs. If you're going to hatch eggs, which is the only way to continue increasing your flock and continue putting meat on the table, you're going to need a really good incubator. So don't cheap out on that. And it doesn't mean you have to go buy the most expensive thing or whatever. What it means is do your research and maybe go try to find that model used on Marketplace or Craigslist. That way you can save some money. But yeah, this thing has just been fantastic. I just moved it. Let's see if you can see. They sat there all winter. The reason they sat there all winter is because this building here is to the north of where this spot is. But you can see I've got a patch right there, almost exactly the same shape as the quail cage. And that's because, you know, their litter is hot. You couldn't put that straight on a garden because it would burn it up. And that's what's going on there, is it's burning the soil up a little bit. It'll recover though. I mean, within a few weeks, it'll recover and you won't even know it's there. And in fact, it'll get more green and more lush. And if you're like me, we've got Bermuda here. Usually the Bermuda responds really well to it. So it'll come in and look really good. But I'll be honest, out of all the animals we raise here, this is number 2 out of 3 that we're going to show you. These guys are the stinkers, okay? They stink. And especially if you don't clean the cage often enough and well enough. But let me show you in the back here. Again, I don't normally let it get this dirty, but excuses, you know, things happen. Life gets in the way. Normally what I do, that's a feed bag right there from chicken feed or quail feed or something. I cut it in half and make it to where it'll lay flat. But what happens inevitably is they'll move it forward by scratching on it and doing different things. But the idea is you can just pull the feed bag out and then the cleaning's not as bad. But yeah, you can see we've got a couple of feet of plywood back here. Now don't come out here. I know you want to be on camera, but don't come out. But up there, we've got an area where the manure is supposed to go through. Now, the problem is because this is not open, that's why it collects here. So you have to stay on top of that. But it's pretty quick and easy. You get a water hose. If it's real bad, you could get a little bleach. But if you're going to do that, you want to keep them separated. So what I would do, if I'm going to spray bleach or something, or even water, is I'll take a tile. We've got some of these tiles around here, old scrap tiles, or a piece of wood or something, and I'll block that door off. I'll get them all in there on the other side, block that door off, hose things down. Usually with this bird manure, the best thing to do is get it wet and keep it wet for a good amount of time. You know, 15, 20 minutes while you do something else. And, you know, those of you that know, water, H2O, is a type of a solvent all on its own. So oftentimes, all you need to do is get some water and let it soak in, and it'll soften that manure up, and then you can scrape it out with a hoe or a, you know, whatever, ice scraper from your vehicle. I put a little shelf in there to hold the feed. Another bigger Rubbermaid tote down there that holds the bulk feed. And so far I haven't had any problems with mice or bug or insect intrusion. So next up, let's go check out the chickens. All right, now I want to take you over and show you what many people call the gateway livestock, backyard livestock animal. This is probably the one you should get first because they are the easiest to deal with. And basically if you're like me, we've got dual purpose birds here. These are Americana and Rhode Island Red mixes, and we'll get up close and let you see them a little up close here in a moment. But you can see I took some of those extra long 10-foot pallets that I was getting for free from my buddy, and I made myself a fence so that I could, you know, cross fence my backyard. And that way the chickens aren't over here where my wife's garden is, and it's so dark you probably can't see it, but up there in that bright area, that's where the garden is. Well, if you let your chickens free range your whole backyard, they'll eat up your wife's garden, and they'll peck on your tomatoes, and they'll, you know, they don't even eat the whole tomato. They just peck it enough where you can't eat it, you know, so it's pretty annoying. I'm going to have to play with this light as we go because we're walking in and out of the shade. That's difficult for filming, but I've got an old, it's either a hog or a dog food feeder. Again, I got that on the land. Someone just threw it in a junk pile, and I restored it, rehabbed it, brought it back to life, and now it's my chicken feeder. It's been excellent for that. It keeps their food dry, and you know, they've got a water thing here, just it's probably a gallon or a gallon and a half water jug. I usually have to fill that probably every other day, unless it's really hot. When it gets really hot, I recommend that if you live in a really hot state, then I recommend you know, go ahead and do that daily, so that when they go through the hottest part of the day, they can have cool water to drink. And it also keeps the algae and different green stuff from growing inside of there. Now, I did have to put some metal up here leaning up against my building because these chickens will peck on wood, any kind of wood. And so you want to keep that in mind. If you're using a building like I am for one side of their fence, you got to watch them. But they mostly just hang out. I've only got 3 left, so I don't have many left. We've lost several along the way for different reasons. We lost our rooster. I think he just died of either old age or maybe something got into him, bad health or something. But you can clearly see this is a dog kennel. You know, I see these things for sale, guys, all the time. These dog kennels for next to nothing. I mean, you can get one of these used that someone just wants to get rid of. Now, it does have chicken wire down on the bottom to keep predators from coming in and keep chickens from trying to, you know, push through it. And I put a couple of old glass screen doors, or what would you call them, storm doors, on top, and that keeps them dry and gives them sun. Now, as we get in the hotter and hotter months, I'm going to go ahead and throw a blue tarp or some sort of a tarp up there to give them shade as well. Although they do have access to it, because I normally leave this open and allow them to go around and peck and pick and scratch out here in this area. But yeah, let's go on in there. I remember this was our first livestock animal, not this particular batch. We've had like 3 or 4 or 5 batches since then of different flocks, I should say. But the very first one, I've still got a picture that I just love to death. It's my daughter when she was still, you know, a young teen. And I had made a chicken tractor and took a picture of it because I was pretty proud of it, and it did work great for years and years. Anyway, my daughter got in there with the little baby chicks, and it's such a great picture of her just totally focused on, you know, the livestock and stuff. Now look at this, okay? I got a fence here. Hopefully that's showing up and I didn't make it too dark here. One of my chickens is over there. She's not supposed to be. I got this one girl that she always escapes, and I'm just worried to death that she's going to get, you know, picked off by a neighborhood dog, because there's nothing to slow them down out there. But, you know, these are older hens. I'm not getting the kind of egg production that I should be getting off of them. We're just letting them kind of live. And actually, my wife and I were just recently talking about, we're probably going to go ahead and that white one there, to start with, over the next few weeks, like every weekend, I need to go ahead and slaughter one and cook it up as a roaster. You know, one that you cook really low and slow all day long, you know, kind of like a roast or like a, you know, a brisket or something like that. You cook them low and slow. And they say that actually these older chickens taste better, and they have more fat on them and stuff like that. This is a crepe myrtle that's just gone crazy, and I attribute a lot of that to the chicken manure that gets filtered down, but they love to scratch around this, as you can see. And I just had to go in and add some dirt because it was kind of bowling out right there. And I went in and added some dirt in there. But yeah, guys, it's a lot of fun. If you've got kids, they can really get into it. You can show them about, you know, the facts of life and different processes. And, you know, it introduces them, especially with rabbits and even chickens and quail to a degree, when the hatching is going on. That's very exciting. It's fun. I don't care if you're, you know, an old adult like me, or if you're a young person. You should respond, male or female. You should probably respond in a positive way when you see little chicks and you hear little peeps. You know, I mean, unless they got some kind of mental problems or something, then they might not. But even then, that could be actually a bridge for people, you know, maybe with like autism and different things like that. They could get into raising livestock, and that could really be a life changer for them. So yeah, it's just a really important factor, and it helps me sleep at night. In the grand scheme of things, how long could I live in survival mode if I had to go just on rabbits, quail, and chicken? Well, I probably wouldn't make it very long, to be honest with you. My system of somewhat self-reliance here still relies on one key critical component: the feed store. I have to go, I'm a slave to the feed store. So and the water, you see the water running over there willy-nilly? That's great right now, but what happens when the grid's down? You can't do that, right? Or what happens when something, you know, I don't know, a EMP or a solar flare or a, you know, whatever, a Carrington event or something happens and knocks the grid down. You know, I don't know how long I can make it. I'll be honest with you, I don't know. That's not really the model that I'm setting up for right now on the homestead. Now, there are things you could do, and I would argue that we would fare better than a lot of other people, okay? That's the thing. We might make it a little bit farther than someone that didn't have anything. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not saying that you can actually become, I mean, you could, but you'd have to live like, you have to be willing to live like Ted Kaczynski to totally, you know, drop off the grid and be, you know, free from, you know, the stores and stuff like that. We still buy salt, we still buy flour, we still buy rabbit feed, we still buy chicken feed, we still, you know, pay for electricity to pump water so we can do all this stuff. So we're, you know, we're all always going to be dependent on the grid. If you want to have a modern style lifestyle, which we do, but there are things you can do that would limit how much you have to buy at the store, and you know where your meat's coming from. And I think that's really important. Guys, I think we've covered about everything that I can think of to cover about backyard livestock. There's not a lot of other really good options for suburbs, you know, because you're going to have to look at your own rules. If your city says no chickens, then you're not going to be able to do chickens. But what you might be able to do is quail, because they're quieter than chickens. And another thing you might be able to do is rabbits, because they're even quieter than quail. I mean, they hardly make any noise at all except for some occasional thumping on the cage, and you're not going to smell them. So you may have to go guerrilla style depending on what the rules are in your environment. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope this was helpful for you in some way. Maybe it gave you some ideas or some inspiration. It's not that hard. If you can put food and water down every day and make sure, you know, keep food in supply, in stock so you can feed them, you're good to go. And it's just a great feeling. It makes you feel so good when you hatch your first quail eggs, and, you know, after stressing about them for 20 something days, or when you see a mother doe, you know, drop kits, and one of them, I didn't even tell you, that other one that I didn't show you, she's the smaller one, but she drops like 10 kits every time. So if I was just going for meat only, and that's all I was worried about, then it would make more sense to keep that mother that produces more bunnies, right? So anyway, that's the name of the game, figuring it all out. And it's a lot of fun to me. I find it really fascinating and fun to research different kinds of animals and what breeds are going to work. What breeds are going to work best in your area and stuff. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Again, we have Tamuk rabbits and New Zealand cross. We have Rhode Island red chickens. That's what I would recommend. And also Americanas. They're all excellent. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. Let me know what you're doing in your garden and on your homestead to make yourself feel better and sleep better at night. As always, I stand for liberty to the bitter end. Hope you do too.